12 men witnessed what no human had ever seen before. 12 men who changed the world in an instant. But what did they say when they saw it? What were their first words when the mushroom cloud rose over Hiroshima? This is the untold story of the crew of the Enola Gay, not as heroes or villains, but as human beings caught in a moment that would define history. Their words, their reactions, and the burden they would carry for the rest of their lives. Before dawn on August 6, 1945, Tinian Island in the Pacific was lit up like a Hollywood premiere. Floodlights illuminated a single B-29 bomber on the runway. Photographers swarmed the tarmac. This was no ordinary mission. The plane was called the Enola Gay, named after the mother of its pilot, Colonel Paul Tibbets. At just 30 years old, Tibbets commanded a crew of 12 men. Most of them had no idea what they were about to do. The night before, 3 of them couldn't sleep. Navigator Theodore Van Kirk, Bombardier Tom Farabee, and pilot Paul Tibbets stayed up playing cards. Van Kirk would later recall thinking, "They expect us to sleep? They just told us we're going to drop an atomic bomb and they don't even know if it'll work or blow up the airplane." At 2:45 in the morning, the Enola Gay roared down the runway. The plane was stripped of everything unnecessary, thousands of pounds lighter than a standard B-29. It had to be. The bomb in its belly weighed 10,000 pounds. Only 4 of the 12 crew members truly understood what they were carrying. The rest knew it was something special, something secret. But they didn't know it was a weapon with the power of 20,000 tons of TNT. The journey took 6 hours. Nearly 2,000 miles across the Pacific Ocean. No GPS, no computers, just charts, watches, and the stars above. Tail gunner Bob Karen sat in the rear of the aircraft, facing backward, alone in his isolated position. He was an avid reader, and something had been bothering him. He had pieced together clues from what he'd read about atomic research. Karen said, "I had a conversation with Colonel Tibbets. I kind of suspected what we were carrying, though I didn't really know for sure. When the talk started that we had a live atomic bomb on board, I started thinking, an atomic bomb? Holy mackerel. What are we going to do today?" As they flew, Weaponeer Navy Captain Deke Parsons and Lieutenant Morris Jepson crawled into the bomb bay. They had to arm the bomb in flight. If they armed it on the ground and the plane crashed during takeoff, half of Tinian Island would be vaporized. 50 miles from Tinian, in the cramped, cold bomb bay, they completed the assembly. The bomb was live. At 7:25 a.m., the Enola Gay reached 26,000 feet over Hiroshima. The city spread out below them, bright and clear in the morning sun. A reconnaissance plane had confirmed the weather was perfect for a visual drop. Hiroshima was home to 350,000 people. Uniquely, it had never been bombed before. It was preserved intentionally, kept pristine to demonstrate the full power of this new weapon. Pilot Paul Tibbets announced to the crew, "It's Hiroshima." Bombardier Tom Farabee locked his sights on a distinctive T-shaped bridge in the heart of the city, the Eyewitness Bridge, a perfect aiming point. At exactly 8:15 a.m. local time, a tone sounded. 15 seconds to release. The crew held their breath. The bomb bay doors opened. Little Boy, as the bomb was codenamed, fell away from the aircraft. Navigator Van Kirk would later remember. When the bomb left the airplane, the plane jumped because you released 10,000 pounds. Immediately, Tibbets threw the Enola Gay into a violent diving turn. He had designed this maneuver himself during training. The plane had to put as much distance as possible between itself and the explosion. They had 43 seconds. The crew put on welding goggles, dark glasses to protect against the flash they'd been warned about. 43 seconds felt like an eternity. Weapons Officer Morris Jepson, who had the authority to abort the mission, began counting. He counted too fast. For a moment, he panicked. Had it failed? Was it a dud? Then, even through the dark glasses, the flash came. Van Kirk described it as being like a camera flashbulb exploding right in front of his face. In the tale, Bob Karen was the first to see what no human had ever witnessed. He screamed into the intercom, "Here it comes!" 2 shock waves hit the aircraft with tremendous force. The plane shook violently. Tibbets thought they'd been hit by anti-aircraft fire. He yelled, "Flak!" But it wasn't flak. It was the pressure wave from the explosion, reaching them 11.5 miles away. When the crew turned to look, what they saw defied comprehension. A massive mushroom cloud, 10,000 feet above them and still climbing. Colors Van Kirk would later describe as purple, pink, every color of the rainbow. But beneath the cloud, where the city had been just moments before, there was nothing but a boiling black mass. The crew fell silent. Radar operator Joe Stiborek would later recall they were completely speechless. But co-pilot Robert Lewis was writing. Against orders, he had kept a diary of the mission in his notebook. In the chaos of that moment, he wrote words that would become the most quoted response from the entire mission. "I am certain the entire crew felt this experience was more than anyone human had ever thought possible. It just seems impossible to comprehend. Just how many did we kill? I honestly have the feeling of groping for words to explain this, or I might say, my God, what have we done?" But according to navigator Van Kirk, who was sitting right behind Lewis, what Lewis actually said out loud was very different. Van Kirk claims Lewis exclaimed, "Look at that son of a bitch go." This contradiction would become part of the mission's complicated legacy. The man who would write thoughtful, conflicted words in his diary apparently expressed excitement in the moment. Years later, pilot Paul Tibbets was asked directly if anyone said, "My God, what have we done?" Tibbets was clear. "That is a misquotation. I've asked the crew in later years, did anybody say, 'Look at what we have done'? And they said, 'Oh no.' But we uttered some exclamations that were rather terse." Bob Caron, still in the tail turret, had been given a camera. While others watched in stunned silence, he did his job. He took photographs. The only handheld photographs of the mushroom cloud over Hiroshima came from Caron's camera. He would later recall, "I could see the city being covered with this low, bubbling mass. It looked like bubbling molasses, spreading out and running up into the foothills. Flames were springing up in different spots through the undercast." Tibbets turned the plane so everyone could see. They circled the devastation. On the long flight back to Tinian, Van Kirk remembered the discussion among the crew. His first feeling, he said, was relief. They had trained for 8 months. The bomb had worked. They had done their job successfully. Then the conversation turned to what it meant for the war. Van Kirk recalled thinking, "This war is over." 12 hours after takeoff, the Enola Gay touched down on Tinian. The mission had been a complete success from a technical standpoint. 0 casualties among the crew. The plane had returned safely. General Karl Spatz was waiting on the tarmac. He immediately awarded Tibbets the Distinguished Service Cross. The crew became instant celebrities. Their faces were in newspapers around the world. Bob Caron wrote to his wife, "It seems our crew and airplanes made history or something. When they let us write about it from here, I'll be able to tell you all about it. Our picture will probably be all over the States before we can say anything." But the crew still didn't fully grasp what they had done on the ground. The death toll wouldn't be known for days. Between 70,000 and 100,000 people died instantly. Tens of thousands more would die from radiation in the weeks and months that followed. 3 days later, a second atomic bomb was dropped on Nagasaki. Jacob Beezer was the only crew member to fly both missions. He was the radar man responsible for monitoring signals that could detonate the bomb prematurely. On August 15, 1945, Japan surrendered. World War II was over. For the rest of their lives, the crew of the Enola Gay would be asked the same question over and over. Do you have any regrets? Paul Tibbets never wavered. In interviews decades later, he remained firm. He believed the bombing was necessary to end the war and save lives. In 1976, he even reenacted the bombing at an air show in Texas, creating controversy and prompting an official apology from the U.S. government. When asked about regrets in 1975, 30 years after the mission, Tibbets stated emphatically, "I have absolutely no regrets at all." Theodore Van Kirk, the navigator, was equally certain. He said he would do it again under the same circumstances. He believed it saved countless American and Japanese lives by preventing a ground invasion. Van Kirk stated, "I honestly believe the use of the atomic bomb saved lives in the long run." Before his death in 2014, Van Kirk was offered a chance to board the restored Enola Gay at the Smithsonian. He declined. "Too many memories of old-timers," he said. Bob Caron, the tail gunner who photographed the cloud, wrote in his letters that he believed the bombing prevented a far more deadly invasion. He had no regrets about his role. Jacob Beezer, who flew both atomic missions, wrote, "I feel no sorrow or remorse for whatever small role I played. I remember Pearl Harbor and all of the Japanese atrocities. War, by its very nature, is immoral. But not all reflections were without conflict. Robert Lewis's diary entry revealed a more complicated emotional response, even if his verbal reaction in the moment was different." Flight engineer Robert Schumard later conceded that one does not boast about killing so many people. In 1995, on the 50th anniversary of the bombing, controversy erupted over a Smithsonian exhibition of the Enola Gay. The exhibit attempted to present the bombing in context with the destruction it caused. Veterans groups clashed with peace activists and historians. Tibbets called it an insult. The crew of the Enola Gay were 12 ordinary men given an extraordinary task in the crucible of total war. They followed orders. They executed their mission with precision, and they witnessed something that changed warfare forever. Their words in that moment, whether expressions of shock, relief, or awe, reflected the weight of what they had done. For better or worse, they had opened the atomic age. Theodore Van Kirk, the last surviving crew member, passed away in 2014 at the age of 93. With his death, the final voice from inside the Enola Gay fell silent.